Something's in there. Timestamp 2:42 a.m. and stayed in bed. The scratching stopping after 5 minutes. The memo, later checked, caught a faint whisper. Look, not her voice. She didn't check the bathroom, keeping the door locked, and worked from her couch the next day, March 11, avoiding the mirror entirely. That afternoon, Hannah called Tyler, who came over at 4:00 p.m. She showed him the memo, his face paling. That's not normal, he said, but suggested a logical fix. Cover the mirror. They hung a towel over it, securing it with duct tape, and tested the bathroom. No sounds, no fog. Tyler stayed for dinner, takeout from Chen's Garden, and left at 8:00 p.m. Hannah felt better, but at 11:15 p.m., the towel was on the floor, the mirror clear, though she hadn't touched it. She snapped a photo with her iPhone, time-stamped 11:17 p.m., and saw it. Her reflection, but with those black eyes, head tilted, smiling wider than her face could. She screamed, slammed the door, and called Rachel, who arrived at 11:30 p.m., calming her down. Rachel, practical, said, "Maybe it's the lighting. Let's check tomorrow." On March 12, Hannah bought a digital voice recorder, a Sony ICD UX570 for $79 at Best Buy in Manchester, and a Wisecam V3 for $39, setting it up to face the bathroom door. She hit record at 9:00 p.m., the apartment quiet, the mirror still uncovered, her nerves frayed. At 2:46 a.m., she woke to the scratching again, louder, like claws on metal. The Wise app showed the bathroom door rattling, time-stamped 2:45 a.m., though it was locked. The recorder caught a voice, clear, saying, "See me now," at 2:44 a.m. Deep, not human. Hannah grabbed her keys and drove to a Motel 6 on South River Road, checking in at 3:10 a.m. She texted Emma, Rachel, and Tyler the Wise clip in audio, group chat exploding with, "Get out, stay out!" Emma called, "That's not a prank. Come to my place." Hannah stayed at Emma's apartment, a loft near downtown, on March 13. She researched her building, visiting the Concord Historical Society, a museum on North State Street. The curator, Mrs. Evelyn Gray, 65, found records. The apartment was part of a 1,902 tenement, site of a 1,947 suicide. A woman, Clara Vance, 32, hanged herself in the bathroom, leaving a note about seeing someone else in the mirror. A 1,947 Concord Monitor article called it a tragedy, mentioning Clara's obsession with an antique mirror bought at an estate sale. Hannah's blood ran cold. Was Clara's mirror hers? She posted the Wise clip to Our Paranormal under the username NH-Designer26, hitting 6-0 upvotes in 12 hours. Users speculated about mirror entities, citing New England folklore of spirits trapped in glass. On March 14, Hannah contacted Granite State Paranormal, a Concord-based group. Their leader, Mark Dillon, a 40-year-old electrician, met her at the Works Bakery, reviewing the footage and audio. "This is a strong presence," he said, "likely tied to the mirror." He agreed to investigate, bringing an EMF meter, a thermal camera, and a spirit box. That evening, at 7:00 p.m., Mark, Hannah, and 2 investigators, Lisa and Greg, entered the apartment, Emma and Rachel waiting outside. The bathroom felt colder, 55 degrees, despite the heater at 70. Mark's EMF meter spiked to 5.4 milligauss near the mirror, time-stamped 7:05 p.m., far above the normal 0.1. The thermal camera showed a cold spot, 10 degrees below the room, in front of the mirror, time-stamped 7:08 p.m. Mark used the spirit box, asking, "Clara, are you here?" It hissed, then said, "Not Clara, mine," at 7:10 p.m. Hannah's knees buckled. The recorder caught a laugh, sharp at 7:12 p.m., the mirror fogging, though no one breathed on it. Mark's face grew serious. "This isn't a ghost. It's something darker. using the mirror as a door. He advised removing it, but warned it might provoke the entity. At 7:30 p.m., Greg unscrewed the mirror, carefully wrapping it in a blanket, the EMF meter dropping to 0.2 milligauss. But as they carried it out, the Wise Cam caught a shadow, human-shaped, darting across the bathroom, time-stamped 7:34 p.m. Lisa's flashlight flickered, and the air turned heavy like syrup. They stored the mirror in Mark's van, locked, and he called a colleague, Sister Margaret Cole, a 58-year-old Catholic spiritualist from Manchester. Hannah crashed at Emma's again, the recorder catching nothing that night. On March 15, Sister Margaret arrived at 6:00 p.m., meeting Hannah and Mark at the apartment. She inspected the bathroom, now mirrorless, and sensed a lingering malice. She found a 1,947 photo of Clara in the Historical Society's archive, her eyes eerily like the reflections. Margaret believed the entity wasn't Clara, but something Clara had summoned, perhaps through occult dabbling. At 6:30 p.m., Margaret performed a cleansing, sprinkling holy water, burning frankincense, and reciting prayers, placing a blessed medallion where the mirror hung. The thermal camera showed no cold spots. Time-stamped 6:45 p.m., the spirit box, used one last time, was silent. Mark took the mirror to a church in Manchester, where it was destroyed in a blessed fire, per Margaret's advice, on March 16. Hannah returned to her apartment on March 17, the bathroom normal, the air light. She posted a final Reddit update with the Wise clip, recorder audio, and Clara's photo, hitting 9-0 upvotes. She moved to a new apartment in Manchester in April 2025, closer to work, avoiding mirrors at night. Concord's bustling again, the works packed with students, the Merrimack flowing calmly. Hannah keeps her Wise Cam off, but sometimes, in a store window, she catches a glimpse of something dark and looks away fast. Ancient relic woke, something dark. That's the harrowing truth Abigail Foster uncovered in the early winter of 2025 in a sleepy town called Taos, New Mexico, home to about 6-0 people, nestled in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. Taos is known for its adobe architecture, art galleries, and a mystical vibe tied to its Native American and Spanish roots. Abigail, a 33-year-old antiques dealer who ran a shop called Desert Finds on Paseo del Pueblo Sur, had a knack for spotting treasures at estate sales. But on January 15, 2025, a strange artifact she brought home from a local auction unleashed something dark, something that turned her quiet life into a waking nightmare. Taos is a blend of old and new, with tourists flocking to the Taos Pueblo, a UNESCO site, and locals grabbing coffee at places like World Cup Cafe. Abigail's shop, a cozy space filled with vintage lamps, Navajo rugs, and dusty books, was her pride, built after years of hustling at flea markets. She lived above the shop in a loft apartment, with creaky floors and windows overlooking the snow-dusted plaza. Her routine was simple: open the shop at 10:00 a.m., chat with customers, and scour auctions for unique pieces. She wasn't superstitious, brushing off tales of cursed objects as marketing ploys. On January 14, she attended an auction at the Taos County Fairgrounds where a rancher's estate was being liquidated. Among the items was a small carved stone idol, about 6 inches tall, listed as pre-Columbian, origin unknown. Its surface was worn, etched with angular symbols, its face featureless except for deep, hollow eyes. Abigail won it for $120, drawn to its eerie beauty, planning to display it in her shop. She had no idea what she'd invited in. On January 15, Abigail brought the idol to her loft, setting it on a bookshelf next to a cactus and some paperbacks. That night at 8:0 p.m, she was sketching the idol for her shop's Instagram, her iPhone 14 propped up, recording a time-lapse for a reel, time-stamped 8:02 p.m. The loft was warm, 68 degrees, a space heater humming, snow falling outside. As she sketched, the air grew heavy, like a storm was brewing indoors. Her phone's video later showed a flicker, brief, like a shadow, crossing the idol at 8:07 p.m., unnoticed at the time. At 8:15 p.m., she heard a hum, low, like a tuning fork, coming from the bookshelf. She checked, finding the idol warm to the touch, though it had been cold minutes before. She snapped a photo, time-stamped 8:17 p.m., the idol's eyes seeming deeper, almost glowing. Uneasy, she moved it to a drawer, locking it, and went to bed, blaming her imagination. At 2:23 a.m., Abigail woke to a sound scratching, like stone on wood, from the living room. She grabbed her flashlight and phone, recording a voice memo. "Something's moving out there," time-stamped 2:24 a.m. The memo caught a whisper, faint, saying, "Take it back," not her voice. She crept out, finding the drawer open, the idol back on the bookshelf, upright, facing her. Her heart pounded. She locked it in a metal cash box, shoving it under her bed, and texted her friend Matteo, a 35-year-old potter who sold at her shop, at 2:30 a.m. "Weird stuff with this statue. Call me," Matteo replied. "Spooky. Talk tomorrow." Abigail didn't sleep, the hum lingering in her ears. On January 16, Abigail opened her shop, but kept the idol upstairs, too rattled to display it. She visited the Taos Public Library, a modern building near the plaza, and researched the idol. A 1,998 book, Artifacts of the Southwest, describes similar carvings found in Chaco Canyon, possibly linked to an ancient cult, though details were vague. A 2010 Taos News article mentioned a local collector, Juan Romero, who'd owned a cursed statue that brought bad luck before he vanished in 2012. Abigail's stomach churned. Was her idol connected? She bought a digital voice recorder, a Zoom H4n Pro for $149 at Best Buy in Santa Fe, 70 miles away, and a Blink mini camera for $29, setting it up to face the cash box in her loft. At 9:00 p.m., she hit record, the apartment quiet, the idol still locked away. At 2:47 a.m., she woke to the hum, louder, and a thud, like something falling. The Blink app showed the cash box open, the idol on the floor, time-stamped 2:46 a.m. The recorder caught a voice deep saying, "Keep me." At 2:45 a.m., Abigail grabbed her keys and drove to Mateo's house, a casita on Kit Carson Road, crashing there at 3:15 a.m. On January 17, Abigail and Mateo returned to her loft, finding the idol back on the bookshelf, though she'd left it on the floor. She showed him the Blink footage and audio, his face pale. "That's not right, Abby," he said, suggesting a priest. Abigail, not religious, hesitated but posted the idol's photo to our occult under the username NM Antiques33, hitting 50 upvotes in 10 hours. A user, Desert Mystic, suggested a Taos Pueblo elder, citing the idol's possible native origin. Abigail emailed the Taos Pueblo Cultural Center, attaching the photo, and got a reply from Maria Vigil, a 60-year-old historian who agreed to meet. That day, Abigail noticed shadows in her peripheral vision, fleeting, human-shaped, vanishing when she turned. Her phone at 6:00 p.m. recorded a video of her loft, time-stamped, catching a shadow moving across the wall, though she was alone. On January 18, Maria met Abigail at her shop at 3:00 p.m. She examined the idol, now in a locked display case, and frowned. "This is old, maybe Anasazi, not meant for outsiders," she said. She explained that such relics, found in kivas, were vessels for spirits, often dangerous if removed. Maria refused to touch it, but suggested a shaman, Daniel Tewa, from the Pueblo. Abigail contacted Daniel, a 55-year-old with a quiet authority who arrived that evening with an EMF meter, a thermal camera, and sage borrowed from a friend in Santa Fe's paranormal scene. The loft felt colder, 60 degrees despite the heater. Daniel's EMF meter spiked to 5.8 milligauss near the idol, timestamp 7:05 p.m., far above the normal 0.1. The thermal camera showed a cold spot, 15 degrees below the room, around the bookshelf, time-stamped 7:08 p.m. At 7:12 p.m., the recorder caught a growl, low, not human, saying, "Mine forever." Abigail's knees shook. Daniel set up a spirit box, asking, "What are you?" It hissed, then said, "Bound. Anger." At 7:15 p.m., he nodded, unsurprised. "This isn't a ghost, it's a guardian woken by your touch." He advised returning the idol to a Kiva site, but since its origin was unknown, a cleansing was the next option. At 7:30 p.m., the blink cam caught the idol's case, rattling, though locked, time-stamped. Daniel's face grew stern. "It knows we're fighting." Abigail, terrified, agreed to the cleansing. She stayed at Mateo's, again, the recorder catching scratches, like claws on metal, at 2:50 a.m., time-stamped from her empty loft. On January 19, Daniel returned at 6:00 p.m. with Maria and a colleague, Elena, a 48-year-old Pueblo spiritualist. They prepared the loft, burning cedar, spreading cornmeal in a circle around the idol, still in its case. Daniel chanted in Tiwa, praying for the spirit's release, while Elena placed a turquoise stone near the idol, a symbol of peace. At 6:45 p.m., the EMF meter dropped to 0.2 milligauss, the cold spot gone. The spirit box, used briefly, was silent. The blink cam caught a shadow, faint, dissolving, time-stamped 6:47 p.m. Abigail felt the air lighten, like a fog lifting. Daniel wrapped the idol in a blanket, taking it to the Pueblo for safekeeping, to be buried in a sacred site not disclosed. Maria warned Abigail, "Respect the old things. They're not yours." Abigail returned to her loft on January 20, the shop bustling with tourists, the plaza bright with snow. She posted a final Reddit update with the blink clip, recorder audio, and idol's photo hitting 8-0 upvotes. She stopped buying unprovenanced artifacts, sticking to pottery and rugs. Taos is calm again, World Cup Cafe packed, the Pueblo welcoming visitors. Abigail keeps her recorder off, but she checks her drawers at night, half expecting those hollow eyes to stare back. Welcome to Midnight Mysteries, where haunting tales and dark secrets unfold under the cover of night. Close your eyes, breathe deep, and drift into eerie stories whispered in the silence of midnight. Perfect for lovers of horror, mystery, and sleep with a thrill. Cursed Doll moved at midnight. Cursed Doll moved at midnight. That's the story Emily Harper stumbled into in the fall of 2023 in a sleepy Ohio town called Millfield. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your name, where the Dollar General is the biggest store for miles, and where old houses creak with secrets nobody talks about. Emily, a 29-year-old freelance graphic designer, had just moved into a fixer-upper on Maple Street, a 2-story Victorian with peeling paint and a sagging porch. She got it cheap at an estate sale, a steal at 87.0 because the previous owner, Mrs. Evelyn Carver, had passed away at 93, leaving no heirs. The house came with furniture, dusty books, and one peculiar item: a porcelain doll, about 2 feet tall, dressed in a faded blue gown, with glass eyes that seemed to follow you. Emily found it in the attic, tucked in a wooden cradle, wrapped in a yellowed quilt. She thought it was creepy but charming, a relic of a bygone era. She named it Clara, after her grandmother, and set it on a shelf in her living room, next to a thrifted lamp and a stack of design magazines. That was her first mistake. Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from and what time is it there? Millfield, Ohio isn't the kind of place you'd expect a horror story. It's got one stoplight, a diner called Judy's that serves pancakes 24/7, and a volunteer fire department that doubles as the town's social hub. The population hovers around 200, and the biggest news of 2023 was when a raccoon got stuck in the high school's vending machine. But Emily, who grew up in Columbus and craved the quiet, loved it. She'd spend her days sketching logos for clients, sipping coffee on her porch, waving at neighbors like old Mr. Thompson, who walked his beagle every morning at 7:15 sharp. At night, she'd binge true crime podcasts, her AirPods drowning out the house's groans as the wind swept through the Appalachian foothills. It was peaceful, mostly, until October 17, 2023. That night, Emily was working late, her laptop glowing in the dim living room. The clock read 11:47 p.m. when she heard it, a soft thud, like a book falling off a shelf. She froze, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The house was old, sure, but this wasn't the usual creak of settling wood. She muted her podcast, some episode about a missing hiker, and listened. Silence. Then, another thud, sharper, from the direction of the living room shelf. Emily's heart picked up. She grabbed her phone, turned on the flashlight, and tiptoed across the hardwood floor, her socks muffling her steps. The beams swept over the couch, the coffee table, the shelf. Clara, the doll, was there, upright, her glass eyes glinting. But something was off. Emily could have sworn she'd left Clara facing the window toward the street. Now, the doll was angled toward her, as if watching her work. Emily laughed nervously, chalking it up to her imagination. She'd been listening to too many creepy stories, she told herself. She reached out, adjusted Clara to face the window again, and went back to her laptop. But as she sat down, she felt Ita prickle on the back of her neck, like someone was standing behind her. She spun around. Nothing. Just Clara on the shelf, the lamp casting long shadows across the room. Emily shook her head, saved her work, and went to bed, locking her bedroom door just in case. The next morning, October 18, Emily woke to her alarm at 7:00 a.m., the sun filtering through her curtains. She shuffled downstairs, brewed coffee, and glanced at the shelf. Clara was facing her again, not the window. Emily's stomach dropped. She hadn't touched the doll since last night. She checked the front door locked, the window sealed. She lived alone, no pets, no roommates. Her first thought was a prank, but who? She barely knew her neighbors, and the house had a new deadbolt installed by a locksmith from Athens, Ohio, just 15 miles away. She took a photo of Clara with her phone, time-stamped 7:12 a.m., and sent it to her best friend, Megan, who lived back in Columbus. "This is freaking me out," she texted. Megan replied, "That's creepy AF. Get rid of it." Emily considered it, but she wasn't ready to toss Clara just yet. Maybe it was a loose shelf, or maybe she was misremembering. She turned Clara toward the window again, this time propping a heavy bookend against her to keep her in place. That day, Emily tried to focus on work, but her eyes kept drifting to the shelf. By 3:00 p.m., the bookend was still there, Clara unmoved. She felt silly, even recording a short video on her phone, narrating, "See, nothing weird? Just a doll." She posted it to her Instagram story, mostly for Megan, who'd been texting her doll memes all day. But that night, things got worse. At 11:59 p.m., Emily was brushing her teeth when she heard a scrape, like wood dragging across wood. She spit out her toothpaste, grabbed her phone, and crept downstairs. The living room was dark, the lamp off. She flicked on her flashlight. The bookend was on the floor, 6 feet from the shelf. Clara was facing her, her porcelain hands slightly raised, as if she'd pushed the bookend off herself. Emily's breath caught. She snapped a photo, timestamp 12:01 a.m., October 19, 2023, and backed away, her heart pounding. Emily didn't sleep that night. She sat on her couch, phone in hand, Googling Haunted Dolls, Ohio. She found stories about Annabelle, the famous possessed doll in Connecticut, and a local legend about a cursed toy in Chillicothe, 40 miles south. At 2:14 a.m., she called Megan, who answered groggily. "Em? It's the middle of the night," Megan said. Emily whispered, "It moved again, I swear." Megan, now awake, told her to leave the house, but Emily didn't want to run. She'd sunk her savings into this place. Instead, she decided to document everything, like a true crime host would. She set up her old GoPro camera, bought in 2021 for a trip she never took, to record the shelf overnight. She hit record at 3:07 a.m., the red light blinking, and went to bed, locking her door. On October 19, Emily woke at 8:00 a.m., her eyes gritty from lack of sleep. She checked the GoPro footage. At first, it was just the shelf, Clara motionless, the bookend still on the floor. But at 12:03 a.m., something happened. The footage showed Clara's head turning slowly toward the camera. No hands, no strings, just the doll moving on its own. Then, at 12:04 a.m., her arms twitched and the camera shook as if something had bumped it. Emily replayed it 5 times, her hands trembling. She uploaded the clip to her laptop, backed it up on a USB drive, and emailed it to Megan with the subject line, "I'm not crazy." Megan called immediately. "That's not normal, Em. Call someone. A priest, a psychic, anyone." Emily didn't know any psychics, but she remembered Mr. Thompson, her neighbor, who'd lived in Millfield for 60 years. At 9:30 a.m., she knocked on his door, the GoPro footage on her phone. Mr. Thompson, a wiry man with a flannel shirt and a coffee mug, invited her in. His living room smelled of pipe, tobacco, and dog fur, his beagle snoring on a rug. Emily showed him the clip. His face paled. "That's Evelyn's doll," he said. She called it her little girl, never let anyone touch it. He told Emily that Evelyn Carver, the house's previous owner, had been obsessed with the doll, claiming it spoke to her. After Evelyn's husband died in 1987, she'd sit in her rocking chair talking to it for hours. The town thought she was eccentric, maybe senile. When Evelyn died in April 2023, the doll was supposed to be sold with the house, but the auctioneer refused to touch it, saying it felt wrong. Emily's skin crawled. She asked Mr. Thompson if Evelyn had ever mentioned anything supernatural. He hesitated, then said, "She thought it was her daughter, reincarnated. Her girl, Clara, died in 1962, age 10. Car accident en route 33. Emily's stomach twisted. She hadn't told Mr. Thompson she'd named the doll Clara. She thanked him, promised to keep him updated, and went home. That afternoon, she drove to the Millfield Public Library, a small brick building with one computer and a microfiche machine. She dug through old newspapers, finding a 1962 article in the Athens Messenger, "Local girl 10 killed in crash." Clara Carver, daughter of Evelyn and George Carver, had died when their Ford Falcon hit a tree on Route 33, 3 miles from Millfield. The article included a grainy photo of Clara, a girl with pigtails, smiling. Emily stared at it, her throat tight. The doll's face wasn't identical, but the resemblance was uncanny. By October 20, Emily was a wreck. She hadn't slept properly in days, and the house felt different, colder, heavier. She kept the GoPro running every night, capturing more footage. On October 19, at 12:02 a.m., Clara's eyes seemed to blink. On October 20, at 12:05 a.m., the doll's head tilted, and a faint whisper came through the camera's mic, too soft to make out. Emily sent the clips to a paranormal forum on Reddit, r paranormal, under the username OhioHaunt23. The post got 40 upvotes in 12 hours, with users begging for updates. Some suggested burning the doll, others a cleansing ritual. One user, Ghost Hunter Cbus, claimed to be a paranormal investigator in Columbus and offered to visit. Emily agreed, desperate for answers. Ghost Hunter Cbus, whose real name was Derek Walsh, arrived on October 21 at 6:00 p.m. A stocky man in his 40s with a thermal camera, EMF meter, and a duffel bag of gear. He walked through the house, his EMF meter spiking near the shelf, reading 3.2 milligauss, far above the normal zero point 0.1. "Something's here," Derek said, his voice calm but firm. He set up motion sensors around Clara and a voice recorder to capture EVP's electronic voice phenomena. At 10:00 p.m., they sat in the living room, lights off, the air thick with tension. Derek asked questions aloud. "Who are you? Why are you here?" At 11:58 p.m., the voice recorder picked up a response, a child's voice, clear as day, saying, "I'm Clara, stay with me." Emily's blood ran cold. Derek's face was grim. He'd heard EVPs before, but never this distinct. At midnight, the motion sensors went off. The GoPro, still recording, caught Clara's arms moving, lifting an inch, then dropping. Derek's thermal camera showed a cold spot, 10 degrees lower than the room, hovering over the doll. He told Emily the doll was a vessel, likely tied to Clara Carver's spirit, or something mimicking it. "It's not safe," he said. "You need to remove it." Emily nodded, but she was torn. She felt sorry for Clara, the girl, not the doll. What if the spirit was trapped, not evil? Derek stayed until 2:00 a.m., collecting more data, then left, promising to analyze the EVPs and return with a medium. On October 22, Emily tried to live normally, working on a logo for a client, a craft brewery in Cincinnati. But at noon, she heard a giggle from the living room. She froze, her pen dropping. The giggle came again, high-pitched, like a child's. She grabbed her phone, started recording audio, and walked to the shelf. Clara was facing her, the bookend on the floor again. The giggle stopped. Emily's audio caught nothing, but she was done doubting herself. That night, she wrapped Clara in the quilt, put her in a cardboard box, and drove to St. Paul's Catholic Church in Athens, 15 miles away. She left the box on the steps with a note, "Please bless or destroy, haunted." She didn't sign it. Emily expected relief, but the house felt worse. On October 23, at 12:03 a.m., her GoPro, still aimed at the empty shelf, recorded footsteps, small and deliberate, like a child's. The next night, her bedroom door, always locked, creaked open at 12:01 a.m. She called Derek, who returned on October 25 with a medium Lisa Marino, a 50-year-old woman with kind eyes and a rosary. Lisa walked the house, pausing at the shelf. "She's still here," Lisa said. "The doll was just a focus. Clara's spirit is tied to this place." Lisa performed a cleansing, burning sage, reciting prayers, sprinkling holy water. She told Emily to talk to Clara, to acknowledge her, to help her move on. That night, Emily sat in the living room alone at 11:55 p.m. She spoke softly. "Clara, I know you're here. I'm sorry you're scared. You don't have to stay." At midnight, the air shifted, lighter, like a window had opened. The GoPro caught nothing unusual. For the first time in days, Emily slept through the night. On October 26, she posted a final Reddit update, including the GoPro clips, EVP audio, and thermal data, which hit 10-0 upvotes. Derek and Lisa confirmed the spirit seemed gone, though Lisa warned Emily to stay vigilant. Emily still lives in the house. She keeps the shelf empty, the GoPro packed away. Sometimes, late at night, she thinks she hears a creak, but it's just the house, she hopes. Millfield is quiet again. The diner still serving pancakes. Mr. Thompson still walking his beagle. But Emily knows something lingered here. Something that moved at midnight, and she'll never forget it. Ghostly whispers haunted my dreams. Ghostly whispers haunted my dreams. That's what happened to Lucas Bennett in the summer of 2024 in a small town called Lebanon, Pennsylvania, about 30 miles east of Harrisburg. Lebanon's the kind of place where you can still find mom and pop shops on Main Street, a farmer's market every Saturday, and houses that have stood since the Civil War. Lucas, a 34-year-old high school history teacher, had lived there his whole life in a modest colonial on Chestnut Street, bought in 2021 for 165,000. The house was old, built in 1853 with narrow stairs, a brick fireplace, and a cellar that smelled of damp earth. Lucas loved its character, the way the floorboards groaned underfoot, the way the windows rattled in a storm. He lived alone, no pets, no partner, just him and his bookshelves packed with biographies and old maps. But in June 2024, something changed. The house wasn't just old anymore, it was alive. Lebanon, with its 26,000 residents, is quiet by most standards. It's got a brew pub called Snitz Creek, a community theater, and a yearly bologna festival that draws a crowd. Lucas fit right in, coaching the high school chess club, grabbing coffee at Kleinfelter's Cafe, and chatting with neighbors like Mrs. Dolores Rivera, a retired nurse who'd wave from her porch every evening. He was practical, not the type to believe in ghosts. He'd roll his eyes at his students' stories about haunted cornfields or the lady in white who supposedly wandered Lebanon's cemetery. But on June 12, 2024, Lucas started to question everything. That night, he went to bed at 10:30 p.m., his usual routine. He'd been grading essays on the American Revolution, his desk lamp casting shadows across his cluttered study. Exhausted, he fell asleep quickly, the hum of a box fan drowning out the summer crickets. Around 2:00 a.m., he woke, heart racing, his sheets damp with sweat. He'd had a dream, vivid and wrong. In it, he was standing in his cellar, the air thick and cold, a woman's voice whispering his name, "Lucas, Lucas," over and over. Her voice was soft, almost pleading, but it came from nowhere and everywhere. He couldn't see her, just darkness and the cellar's stone walls. He woke gasping, the whisper still echoing in his head. He checked his phone. 2:03 a.m. He tried to shake it off, blaming stress, maybe the Thai takeout from golden chopsticks he'd had for dinner. But the feeling lingered, like someone was watching him from the corner of his room. Lucas didn't sleep much after that. He got up, turned on every light, and made tea, chamomile, hoping it'd calm him. The house was silent, except for the fan and the occasional creak. He checked the lock's front door, back door, all secure. He even opened the cellar door, a heavy wooden slab, and shone his phone's flashlight down the stairs. Nothing but cobwebs and an old furnace. He laughed it off, closed the door, and went back to bed, leaving the hallway light on. But the next night, June 13, it happened again. Same dream, same cellar, same whisper. "Lucas, Lucas." This time the voice sounded closer, like it was right beside his ear. He woke at 2:01 a.m., his alarm clock glowing red, his throat was dry, his hands shaking. He grabbed a notebook from his nightstand, a habit from grading, and wrote, "Dream again, woman's voice, cellar, 2:01 a.m." He needed proof he wasn't losing it. By June 14, Lucas was rattled. He taught his classes on autopilot, his students noticing his bloodshot eyes. After school, he stopped by Kleinfelter's Cafe and told his friend Jake, the barista, about the dreams. Jake, a 25-year-old with a man bun and a true crime podcast obsession, grinned. "Dude, your house is haunted. Bet it's the lady in white." Lucas scoffed, but Jake's words stuck. That afternoon, Lucas called his mom, Ellen, who lived in Lancaster, 40 miles away. She was practical, a retired accountant, and told him to see a doctor, maybe get a sleep study. "You're working too hard," she said. Lucas agreed, but deep down, he knew it wasn't stress. The whispers felt real, like they were reaching into his mind. On June 15, Lucas decided to document everything like a historian would. He bought a digital voice recorder, a Sony ICD PX370 from Best Buy in Harrisburg for $59.99, and set it on his nightstand that night. He hit record at 10:45 p.m., the red light blinking, and fell asleep. At 2, 2 a.m., he woke from the same dream, the whisper louder, almost desperate, "Lucas, help me." He checked the recorder, his hands clumsy with adrenaline. The audio was clear. At 2:00 a.m., a woman's voice, faint but unmistakable, said, "Lucas, help me." No one else was in the house. Lucas played it back 3 times, his stomach churning. He texted Jake at 2:15 a.m., attaching the audio. Jake replied, "Holy crap, that's an EVP. You got a ghost, man." Lucas barely slept after that. On June 16, he drove to the Lebanon County Historical Society, a small museum on Cumberland Street, to dig into his house's past. The librarian, Ms. Patricia Klein, a 70-year-old with bifocals, helped him search property records. The house at 412 Chestnut Street had been built in 1853 by a merchant, Samuel Weiss. In 1876, it was sold to a family, the Morgans. Patricia found a newspaper clipping from the Lebanon Daily News, dated August 3, 1878, tragedy at Morgan residence. Elizabeth Morgan, age 28, had died in the cellar, found by her husband Thomas after she'd fallen down the stairs. The article called it an accident, but neighbors whispered about foul play. Thomas moved away a year later, and the house changed hands often, with owners complaining of strange noises. Lucas's skin prickled. Elizabeth, was that the voice? That night, June 17, Lucas set up the recorder again and added a webcam, a Logitech C920 he'd used for virtual classes in 2020, aimed at his bed. He wanted proof, something to show it wasn't just dreams. At 2:04 a.m., he woke, the whisper now a plea, "Lucas, find me." The recorder caught it clearer at 2:02 a.m. "Lucas, find me." The webcam footage was worse. At 2:03 a.m., a shadow moved across his room, human-shaped, near the foot of his bed. It wasn't a car's headlight, she's curtains were drawn. Lucas uploaded the clip to his laptop, time-stamped, and backed it up on a hard drive. He posted it to a paranormal subreddit, r/Ghosts, under the username ChessTeacherPA. The post got 60 upvotes in 24 hours, with users urging him to leave or contact a medium. On June 18, Lucas was a mess. He called in sick, his first time in 3 years, and reached out to Jake, who connected him with a local paranormal group, Susquehanna Spirits. Their leader, Karen Lutz, a 45-year-old former paramedic, visited that evening with an EMF meter, a spirit box, and a thermal camera. Karen walked the house, her meter spiking to 4.1 milligauss in the cellar, way above the normal 0.2. "There's energy here," she said. At 10:00 p.m., they held a session in the cellar, the air heavy, the stone walls slick with moisture. Karen used the spirit box, a device that scans radio frequencies for voices. At 10:47 p.m., it crackled, and a voice said, "Elizabeth, trapped." Lucas's knees buckled. Karen asked, "Elizabeth, are you here?" The box replied, "Help me." The thermal camera showed a cold spot, 8 degrees below the room near the stairs. Karen told Lucas the cellar was a hot spot, likely where Elizabeth died. She suspected Elizabeth's spirit was stuck, reliving her death, reaching out through his dreams. "She's not malicious," Karen said, "but she's desperate." She advised a cleansing, but warned it might not work if Elizabeth's death was unresolved. Lucas nodded, his mind racing. He'd taught about historical mysteries, unsolved cases. Could he solve this one? On June 19, he returned to the Historical Society, digging deeper. He found a 1,879 court record. Thomas Morgan had been questioned about Elizabeth's death, but never charged. A neighbor, Mary Klein, had testified that Elizabeth was unhappy, that Thomas was rough with her. The case was dropped for lack of evidence. That night, Lucas set up the recorder, webcam, and a new motion sensor, bought for $29.99 from Amazon. At 1 a.m., he woke, the whisper now a cry, "Lucas, he pushed me." The recorder caught it at 2:00 a.m. He pushed me. The motion sensor triggered at 2 a.m., no visible cause. The webcam showed the shadow again, clearer, a woman's silhouette by his door. Lucas was done sleeping in the house. He packed a bag, drove to a Holiday Inn in Harrisburg, and checked in at 3:30 a.m. He called Karen, who agreed to bring a medium, Teresa Cole, for a second session. On June 20, Karen and Teresa, a 60-year-old with a calm voice and a cross necklace, met Lucas at the house. Teresa sensed Elizabeth immediately, describing a woman in a long dress, her hair pinned up, standing in the cellar. "She's angry," Teresa said. "Not at you, at him." They held a session at 9:00 p.m., Teresa speaking softly. "Elizabeth, you're safe." "Tell us what happened," the spirit box hissed, then said, "Thomas, stairs, pushed." Lucas's heart sank. Teresa performed a cleansing, burning white sage, reciting a prayer and placing salt at the cellar's entrance. She told Lucas to address Elizabeth, to acknowledge her pain. At 11:55 p.m., Lucas sat in the cellar alone and said, "Elizabeth, I hear you. I believe you. You can rest now." At midnight, the air lightened, the cellar less oppressive. The webcam, still running, caught no shadows. On June 21, Lucas slept in his bed, no dreams, no whispers. He posted a final Reddit update, including the EVP audio, webcam clips, and thermal data, hitting 12:0 upvotes. Karen and Teresa confirmed the energy had shifted, though Teresa warned spirits can linger. Lucas kept teaching, kept coaching chess, but he never opened the cellar door again. He hung a cross above it just in case. Lebanon went back to normal, the Bologna Festival planning for 2025, Mrs. Rivera still waving from her porch. But Lucas knows Elizabeth was there, her whispers in his dreams, and he'll never unhear them. Abandoned Asylum's terrifying secret uncovered. Abandoned Asylum hid a terrifying secret. That's what Ryan Mitchell discovered in the spring of 2025 in a forgotten corner of West Virginia called Point Pleasant, a town of about 40 people nestled along the Ohio River. Point Pleasant is best known for the Mothman legend, a winged creature tied to a 1967 bridge collapse, but Ryan's story has nothing to do with that. It's about the old Blackwell Asylum, a sprawling, decaying complex on the outskirts of town, shuttered since 1983. Ryan, a 27-year-old mechanic who fixed trucks at a local garage, wasn't looking for trouble. He was just curious, the kind of guy who'd watch Urbex videos on YouTube and dream of exploring. But on March 22, 2025, his curiosity led him to a place no one should have gone, and he uncovered something that still keeps him awake at night. Point Pleasant is a quiet town, with a Dollar Tree, a diner called the Coffee Grinder, and a riverfront park where folks fish for catfish. The Blackwell Asylum, though, is a blight on the landscape, a mile from the nearest road, hidden by overgrown pines and rusted no trespassing signs. Built in 1890 as the Blackwell Lunatic Asylum, it housed thousands over the years patients, with mental illnesses, criminals, and anyone society deemed unfit. By the 1970s, reports of abuse, experimental treatments, and mysterious deaths had piled up, and the state closed it after a 1982 expose in the Charleston Gazette. Ryan knew the stories, whispered at the garage or over beers at Tudor's Biscuit World. Kids said the asylum was haunted, that screams echoed at night. Ryan didn't buy it. He figured the real horror was history, not ghosts, but he wanted to see it for himself. On March 22, Ryan and his buddy, Caleb Turner, a 25-year-old welder, planned a trip to Blackwell. They'd been talking about it for weeks, hyped by YouTube channels like Exploring with Josh. Ryan packed a backpack with a flashlight, a GoPro Hero 10 he'd bought used for $200, a water bottle, and a pocket knife. Caleb brought a crowbar, just in case, and his iPhone for photos. They drove Ryan's 2018 Ford F-150 to a dirt road near the asylum, parking at 3:00 p.m. under a gray sky. The air was chilly, about 45 degrees, with a breeze rustling the pines. They hopped a sagging chain-link fence, the GoPro strapped to Ryan's chest, recording. The asylum loomed ahead, a red brick monolith with broken windows, ivy choking the walls, and a collapsed chimney. It looked like a place time forgot, and Ryan felt a thrill, not fear. That was his first mistake. They entered through a side door, the lock long broken, and stepped into a hallway littered with debris-spilling paint, shattered tiles, and rusted gurneys. The air smelled of mold and something sharper, like old medicine. Ryan's GoPro caught it all. The graffiti-covered walls, the flickering light from their flashlights, Caleb's nervous laugh. They explored the first floor, finding an old cafeteria with overturned tables, a nurse's station with scattered files, and a therapy room with a cracked electroshock machine. Ryan narrated for the camera, "This is creepy, but kinda cool." At 3:47 p.m., they reached a stairwell to the basement marked Ward C restricted in faded paint. Caleb hesitated, but Ryan, adrenaline pumping, said, "Come on, man, this is the good stuff." They descended, the stairs creaking, the air growing colder, heavier. The basement was different. The walls were concrete, stained with water, and the corridors narrower, like a maze. Their flashlights cast long shadows, and the GoPro's audio picked up a faint drip, drip, drip. They found locked doors, some with small barred windows, and rooms filled with junk syringes, broken chairs, a straitjacket hanging on a hook. Ryan's excitement faded. "This feels wrong," he whispered. Caleb nodded, gripping the crowbar. At 4:12 p.m., they reached a door labeled Observation Room 3. It was ajar, unlike the others. Ryan pushed it open, the hinges screaming. Inside was a small room, maybe 10 by 10 feet, with a rusted metal table bolted to the floor, restraints dangling from the sides. On the table was a leather-bound ledger, its pages yellowed but intact. Ryan picked it up, his hands steady despite the chill in his bones. The ledger was a patient log, dated 1953 to 1955, from a Dr. Harold Vance, chief psychiatrist. It listed names, diagnoses, and treatments. Most were routine sedatives, therapy, but the last entry, dated June 17, 1955, was different. It described patient 47, a woman named Margaret Lowe, age 32, admitted for hysteria. The note read, "Subject resistant to standard protocols. Initiated procedure 12. Results inconclusive. Subject terminated." Ryan's stomach twisted. Terminated? He flipped the page, finding a sketch. A woman strapped to a table, wires attached to her head, a machine labeled Project Echelon. Caleb, looking over his shoulder, said, "Dude, this is bad. We should go." But Ryan couldn't stop. He slipped the ledger into his backpack, the GoPro still rolling, time-stamped 4:19 p.m. That's when they heard it. A low moan, like someone in pain, coming from deeper in the basement. Ryan froze, his flashlight shaking. Caleb whispered, "That's not the wind." The GoPro's audio caught it, faint but clear, at 4:21 p.m. They backed out of the room, their footsteps loud in the silence. The moan came again, closer, followed by a scrape like metal on concrete. Ryan's mind raced, maybe a squatter, an animal? But the asylum had been empty for decades, patrolled occasionally by county deputies. They turned a corner, and their flashlights hit something. A figure, humanoid, at the end of the hall, maybe 50 feet away. It was tall, thin, its head tilted unnaturally. The GoPro caught a glimpse before Ryan swung the camera away, his breath ragged. Caleb grabbed his arm. "Run now!" They bolted, the moan turning into a wail behind them. They reached the stairs, scrambling up, the GoPro bouncing, recording chaos. At the first floor, they didn't stop, sprinting through the hallway, out the side door, and over the fence. They didn't look back until they were in the truck. Doors locked at 4:37 p.m. Ryan's hands shook as he stopped the GoPro. Caleb was pale, muttering, "What was that?" Ryan didn't answer. He drove straight to his apartment on Walnut Street, a one-bedroom above a laundromat. There, they watched the footage. The figure in the hall was blurry but real, its eyes reflective, like an animal's, but its body too human. The ledger was real, too, its ink smudged but legible. Ryan uploaded the footage to his laptop, time-stamped, and backed it up on a flash drive. He texted his sister Lauren, a nurse in Huntington, 60 miles away, with a clip. "This is insane," she replied. "Don't go back." But Ryan couldn't let it go. On March 23, he drove to the Point Pleasant Library, a small building with free Wi-Fi and a local history section. He searched for Blackwell Asylum records, finding a 1982 Gazette article, "Asylum Closed Amid Scandal." It mentioned Dr. quote, Vance, accused of unethical experiments in the 1950s, including Project Echelon, a rumored CIA-funded study on mind control. No charges were filed. Vance died in 1960. Ryan found a 1955 obituary for Margaret Lowe, listed as deceased at Blackwell Asylum, cause unknown. Her photo showed a woman with dark hair, her eyes hauntingly familiar. Ryan's skin crawled. Was she the figure? He posted the ledger's last page to a Reddit forum, r Urban Exploration, under the username WVNEC88. The post hit 0 upvotes in 18 hours, with users speculating about ghosts, government cover-ups, or worse. On March 24, Ryan and Caleb agreed to return, but not alone. They contacted Appalachian Paranormal, a group based in Charleston. The leader, Emma Dorsey, a 38-year-old former cop, arrived on March 25 with 2 investigators, Mark and Jenna, bringing EMF meters, a FLIR thermal camera, and a spirit box. They met at 6:00 p.m., the sky orange with dusk. Emma reviewed Ryan's footage, her face grim. "Something's active here," she said. They entered the asylum, the air colder now, 38 degrees. In the basement, Emma's EMF meter spiked to 5.3 milligauss near observation room 3, far above the normal 0.1. At 7:14 p.m., the spirit box crackled, spitting out, "Margaret, help!" Ryan's knees weakened. The FLIR showed a cold spot, 12 degrees below the room, shaped like a person by the table. Emma led a session asking, "Margaret Lowe, are you here?" The spirit box replied, "Trapped, Vance." At 7:32 p.m., the moan returned, loud, from the hall. Jenna's flashlight caught Movementa's shadow, tall, darting past a doorway. The GoPro, now on Mark's chest, recorded it, time-stamped 7:33 p.m. Emma stayed calm, but her voice was tight. "We're not alone." They moved to leave, but the basement door, which they'd propped open, was shut. Caleb pried it with the crowbar, his hands shaking. The wail came again, closer, as they reached the stairs. At the first floor, they ran, exiting at 7:49 p.m., the asylum silent behind them. Back at Ryan's apartment, Emma analyzed the data. The EMF spikes, thermal anomaly, and spirit box responses suggested a residual entity, likely Margaret, tied to her death. Project Echelon was real, Emma said, citing declassified CIA files from the 1970s. They tested on patients like her. She didn't just die. She was broken. Emma advised Ryan to stay away and offered to contact a medium. Ryan nodded, but he felt guilty. Margaret's story wasn't just a ghost tale. It was a crime, buried by time. On March 26, he drove to the Mason County Courthouse, 10 miles away, and filed a public records request for Blackwell's patient files. A clerk promised to search, but warned most records were destroyed in a 1,984 fire. That night, Ryan slept at Caleb's place, a trailer on Route 2. At 2:17 a.m., he woke, heart pounding, hearing a whisper, "Find me." No recorder caught it, but Ryan knew it was her. He posted a final Reddit update on March 27 with the GoPro clips, Spirit Box audio, and a scan of the ledger. It hit 15 zero upvotes, with users urging him to contact the press. On March 28, Emma returned with a medium, Clara Hayes, a 55-year-old with a soft southern drawl. At the asylum, Clara sensed Margaret in the basement, angry but not evil. She performed a cleansing, burning sage, praying and placing a quartz crystal on the table. "Margaret, you're free," Clara said. At 8:00 p.m., the air shifted lighter. The FLIR showed no cold spots. Ryan's GoPro caught nothing unusual. Ryan hasn't returned to Blackwell. He still works at the garage, still grabs coffee at the coffee grinder, but he keeps the ledger locked in a safe. The courthouse found no records, but a local reporter, tipped off by Reddit, is digging into Project Echelon. Point Pleasant talks about Ryan's footage now, a new legend to rival Mothman. Sometimes Ryan dreams of the asylum, the table, the moan. He wonders if Margaret found peace or if something else lingers waiting. "I explored a haunted tunnel. I explored a tunnel, found horror." That's what happened to Ethan Caldwell in the winter of 2025 in a rural stretch of Tennessee called Copperhill, a town of barely 300 souls tucked in the Blue Ridge Mountains near the Georgia border. Copperhill's a place where the past clings tight, with old copper mines scarring the hills and stories of ghosts whispered at the local gas station. Ethan, a 24-year-old part-time bartender at the Copper Kettle, wasn't chasing ghosts. He was bored, stuck in a dead-end job, scrolling YouTube for adventure. But on February 8, 2025, he stumbled into the kind of story that changes you deep in an abandoned mine tunnel called Old Number 7. What he found there wasn't just creepy, it was evil. Copperhill's small, the kind of town where you know every face at the post office, and the biggest event is the annual Polk County Fair. The mines, though, are its shadow. They boomed in the 1800s, pulling copper from the earth, but by the 1980s they'd shut down, leaving tunnels like Number 7 to rot. Number 7 was infamous, a mile-long shaft off Ducktown Road, sealed with a rusted grate but accessible if you knew where to pry. Locals avoided it, saying miners died there in a 1,903 collapse, their bodies never recovered. Ethan heard the tales at the bar, from old-timers nursing Coors Light, but he shrugged them off. Ghosts were for kids, he thought. On February 8, after a slow shift, he decided to check it out, spurred by a Reddit thread on r abandoned places about Tennessee's haunted mines. Ethan didn't go alone. He roped in his cousin, Mia Torres, a 22-year-old cashier at Food City in McKaysville, 5 miles away. Mia was skeptical but game, always up for a dare. They met at Ethan's trailer at 2:00 p.m., the sky heavy with snow clouds. Ethan packed a backpack, a Phoenix flashlight, a GoPro Hero 9 he'd won in a 2023 raffle, extra batteries, a granola bar, and a Leatherman multi-tool. Mia brought her iPhone 13 and a can of mace, just in case. They drove Ethan's 2015 Jeep Cherokee to Ducktown Road, parking near a faded sign for the mine, half buried in kudzu. The air was frigid, 28 degrees, the ground crunchy with frost. Ethan strapped on the GoPro, hit record, and grinned at Mia. "Ready to be famous?" he said. Mia rolled her eyes, but followed him to the grate, which hung loose, bolts rusted through. They slipped inside at 2:37 p.m., the tunnel swallowing them whole. The entrance was narrow, about 6 feet high, the walls rough-hewn rock, glistening with damp. The air smelled of wet stone and something sour, like decay. Ethan's flashlight cut through the dark, the GoPro capturing their steps, Mia's sneakers scuffing gravel. The tunnel sloped down, the temperature dropping to the low 20s. They found relics of the mine's past. A rusted pickaxe, a broken lantern, wooden beams sagging under decades of neglect. Ethan narrated, "This is number 7, supposedly haunted." Mia snorted, her breath visible. "It's just a hole, Ethan." But at 2:50, 2 p.m., 200 yards in, they heard it. A faint knock, like metal on rock, echoing from deeper in the tunnel. Ethan paused, the GoPro's audio catching it, time-stamped. "You hear that?" he whispered. Mia nodded, her mace now in hand. They pressed on, the knocks growing louder, irregular, like someone tapping Morse code. At 1 p.m., they reached a fork, the tunnel splitting left and right. The left path was collapsed, a pile of rubble blocking it, but the right path opened into a wider chamber, maybe 20 feet across, with a low ceiling. The GoPro caught something odd, a circle of stones arranged deliberately in the chamber's center. Inside the circle were bones, small, maybe animal, and a rusted miner's helmet, its leather strap rotted. Ethan knelt, his flashlight on the helmet, and saw scratches inside, forming letters JH1903. His gut tightened. "This is messed up," he said. Mia, filming on her iPhone, agreed. "Let's go back." But the knocks came again, closer, from the tunnel's right path beyond the chamber. Ethan, curiosity outweighing fear, said, 5 more minutes. That was his mistake. They followed the right path, the tunnel narrowing, the ceiling brushing Ethan's hair. At 3:14 p.m., the GoPro's light flickered, though the batteries were fresh. The knocks stopped, replaced by a low hum like a distant machine. Ethan's flashlight caught something ahead, a wooden door, half-rotted, set into the rock. It wasn't on any mine map he'd seen online. The door had no lock, just a crude handle and carving symbols, maybe runes, etched deep. Ethan pushed it, the wood groaning, and it opened to a small room, maybe 8 by 8 feet. Inside was a stone slab, like an altar, stained dark, with chains bolted to the corners. On the slab lay a single object, a miner's pickaxe, its handle cracked, the blade crusted with something brown. The GoPro recorded it, time-stamped 3:18 p.m. Mia whispered, "This isn't right, Ethan. Let's go now." Before they could move, the hum became a voice, guttural, unintelligible, coming from the walls. Ethan swung his flashlight, the beam catching Movemento shadow, tall, hunched, darting across the room's far wall. The GoPro caught it, a blurry shape at 3:19 p.m. Mia screamed, dropping her phone, the screen cracking. Ethan grabbed her arm and they ran, the voice growing louder, words forming, "Stay, mine." The door slammed shut behind them, though no one touched it. Ethan yanked it open, the hinges splintering, and they sprinted back through the chamber, past the stone circle, the knocks now a deafening clang, like hammers on steel. The tunnel seemed longer, the air thicker, their flashlights dimming. At 3:27 p.m., they reached the entrance, scrambling through the grate, collapsing in the snow. Ethan's GoPro was still recording, the battery at 5%. They drove to Mia's apartment in McKaysville, a duplex near the Taco River, and watched the footage, their hands shaking. The shadow was real, its outline jagged like it wore tattered cloth. The voice, caught faintly, chilled them. "Stay. Mine." Ethan texted his boss, Tommy, at the copper kettle, attaching a clip. "What the hell is this?" Tommy replied, "Don't go back, kid." Mia refused to touch her phone, its cracked screen a reminder. Ethan uploaded the footage to a hard drive and posted a still of the altar to R Paranormal under the username TN Bartender24. The post got 7 upvotes in 12 hours, with users begging for the video. Some mentioned a local legend, number 7 wasn't just a mine. It was a ritual site, tied to a 1,903 cult of miners who offered workers to something in the earth. On February 9, Ethan visited the Polk County Historical Society in Benton, 10 miles away, a one-room museum with mining exhibits. The curator, Mrs. Evelyn Price, 68, paled when Ethan showed her the helmet's photo. "That's Jonah Hale," she said. "Foreman in 1903, vanished after the collapse. Some said he led a group, not a union, something darker." She pulled a 1903 ledger from the mine's owners, listing 12 missing workers, including Hale, after an incident in Shaft 7. A newspaper clipping from the Chattanooga Times dated July 14, 1903, hinted at unnatural practices but lacked details. Ethan's throat tightened. Was Hale the shadow, or something worse? That night, Ethan stayed at Mia's, sleeping on her couch. At 2:43 a.m., he woke to knocking, slow, deliberate, from the apartment's front door. He checked, heart pounding, no one there. Mia, awake, heard it too. Ethan set up his GoPro, recording the living room, but caught nothing. On February 10, he contacted Tennessee Ghost Trackers, a paranormal group in Chattanooga, 50 miles away. Their lead investigator, Derek Vance, a 42-year-old electrician, met Ethan and Mia at the Copper Kettle on February 11, reviewing their footage. "That's not human," Derek said of the shadow. He agreed to investigate number 7, bringing an EMF meter, a thermal camera, and a spirit box. On February 12, at 5:00 p.m., Derek, Ethan, and 2 team members, Lisa and Greg, entered the tunnel, Mia staying behind, too shaken. The air was 25 degrees, the ground icy. Derek's EMF meter spiked to 4.8 milligauss near the altar room, far above the normal 0.1. At 5:32 p.m., the spirit box hissed, spitting out, "Jonah! Blood!" Ethan's stomach dropped. The thermal camera showed a heat signature, human-shaped, by the altar, though no one stood there, time-stamped 5:34 p.m. Derek asked, "Jonah Hale, what do you want?" The spirit box replied, "Mine, forever." A clang echoed, like the pickaxe falling, though it hadn't moved. Lisa's flashlight died, despite new batteries. At 5:41 p.m., the shadow appeared, closer in the doorway, the GoPro catching its reflective eyes. Derek shouted, "Go!" They ran, the voice roaring, "Stay!" They reached the entrance at 5:49 p.m., breathless, the tunnel silent. At Derek's office, a converted garage, they analyzed the data. The EMF spikes, thermal anomaly, and spirit box responses pointed to a malevolent entity, possibly Hale, bound to the tunnel by whatever happened in 1903. "This isn't a ghost," Derek said. "It's something darker, tied to that altar." He cited a 1970s book, Tennessee's Hidden Histories, mentioning number 7 as a sacrificial site for a cult worshipping a mountain spirit. Derek urged Ethan to stay away and offered to bring a medium. Ethan agreed, guilt gnawing at him. He'd disturbed something, and it followed him. On February 13, Ethan and Mia moved to a motel in Blue Ridge, Georgia, 15 miles away, splitting the $80 a night cost. At 2:47 a.m., the knocking returned, now on the motel window. Ethan recorded it on his phone, catching 3 distinct taps, time-stamped. He posted a final Reddit update on February 14 with the GoPro clips, spirit box audio, and the helmet photo hitting 10-0 upvotes. On February 15, Derek returned to number 7 with a medium, Sister Mary Ellison, a 60-year-old former nun. She sensed a presence, not human, in the altar room. At 6:00 p.m., she performed a cleansing, sprinkling holy water, reciting psalms, and placing a silver cross on the slab. "Leave this place," she commanded. The air warmed, the thermal camera clear. Ethan's GoPro, set up outside, caught no knocks. Ethan and Mia went back to Copperhill, but Ethan quit the bar, taking a job at a hardware store in Blue Ridge. He keeps the GoPro footage locked in a safe, the helmet photo deleted from his phone. Copperhill's quiet again, the fair planning for summer, but number 7's grate is now welded shut, a county order after Ethan's Reddit post. Sometimes Ethan hears a tap at night, faint, like a distant pickaxe. He prays it's just the wind, but he knows better. Demon lurked in my basement. Demon lurked in my basement shadows. That's the nightmare Olivia Grant faced in the early spring of 2025 in a quiet suburb of Grand Rapids, Michigan, called Kentwood, home to about 0 people. Kentwood's the kind of place where kids bike to Dairy Queen, neighbors mow each other's lawns, and the biggest drama is a delayed road repair on 44th Street. Olivia, a 32-year-old single mom and paralegal at a downtown law firm, lived in a 1,970s split level on Meadow Lane Drive, bought in 2022 for $245,000. It was her and her 8-year-old son Noah in a house with shag carpet, a wood-paneled den, and a basement she rarely used. But in March 2025, something in that basement turned her life upside down, something she swears wasn't human. Grand Rapids is a mid-sized city, but Kentwood feels smaller, with strip malls, a Meijer superstore, and a community center hosting Friday fish fries. Olivia loved the normalcy, dropping Noah at school, grabbing coffee at Bigby, and waving to her neighbor, Mr. Doug Larson, a retired electrician who'd tinker in his garage. Her house was cozy, if dated, with a backyard swing set and a basement full of junk Christmas decorations, Noah's old tricycle, and a washer-dryer that rattled like a freight train. She'd avoided the basement since moving in, creeped out by its low ceiling and flickering fluorescent light. Noah wasn't allowed down there, a rule he followed without complaint. But on March 3, 2025, everything changed. That evening, Olivia was cooking spaghetti, Noah doing homework at the kitchen table. It was 6:15 p.m., the sky dark, a light rain tapping the windows. Noah looked up, frowning. "Mom, what's that smell?" Olivia sniffed, catching a whiff of something foul, like sulfur or rotten eggs, coming from the basement door, a flimsy plywood slab off the kitchen. She figured it was a plumbing issue, maybe a backed-up drain. She grabbed a flashlight, her iPhone 12, and opened the door, the smell hitting her like a wall. The stairs creaked as she descended, her flashlight beam sweeping the concrete floor, littered with dust and cobwebs. The washer-dryer was silent, the light off. At the bottom, she gagged, the odor choking. Her phone's flashlight caught something odd, a dark smear, like oil, on the wall near the furnace, forming a rough shape, maybe 3 feet tall, human-like but distorted. She snapped a photo, time-stamped 6:22 p.m., and backed up, her skin prickling. That's when she heard it, a low growl, not animal, not mechanical, coming from the corner where the smear was. She ran upstairs, slamming the door, her heart pounding. Olivia didn't tell Noah, not wanting to scare him. She locked the basement door, a cheap knob lock, and texted her friend Jenna, a realtor in Grand Rapids. "Weird smell in basement, creepy vibe. Plumber?" Jenna replied. "Could be mold. Call someone tomorrow." Olivia tried to sleep, but the growl echoed in her mind. At 2:47 a.m., she woke to a thud, like something heavy falling downstairs. She checked her phone's security app, linked to a Blink camera in the living room. The feed was normal, but the basement door was ajar, though she'd locked it. She grabbed a baseball bat from Noah's room, crept to the kitchen, and shut the door, sliding a chair under the knob. Nothing else happened, but she didn't sleep. Her phone opened to 911. On March 4, Olivia called a plumber, Mike's Plumbing, from Kentwood. Mike, a burly guy in his 50s, arrived at 10:00 a.m., checked the basement, and found no leaks or sewer issues. "That smell's not normal," he said, eyeing the smear, now fainter. "Might be a dead animal in the walls." He suggested an exterminator and left, refusing to charge her. Olivia took another photo of the smear, time-stamped 10:32 a.m., noting it looked less distinct, like it was fading. She worked from home that day, keeping Noah upstairs, but the house felt wrong, the air heavy, like a storm was coming. At 7:00 p.m., Noah, coloring in the den, said, "Mom, someone's whispering." Olivia froze. She heard nothing, but Noah pointed to the basement door. "Down there." She grabbed him, locked them in her bedroom, and called Jenna, who came over at 7:30 p.m. Jenna, practical, suggested a carbon monoxide detector, but Olivia knew it wasn't that. Her detector, installed in 2022, was fine. On March 5th, Olivia bought a digital voice recorder, a Zoom Honin for $99 at Best Buy, and a Wise Cam for $34, setting it up to face the basement door. She hit record at 8:00 p.m., the house quiet, Noah asleep. At 2:51 a.m., she woke to another thud, louder, like metal on concrete. The Wisecam's app showed the basement door open, swinging slowly, time-stamped 2:50 a.m. She checked the recorder, her hands shaking. At 2:49 a.m., it caught a voice, deep guttural, saying, "Leave, now." No one was in the house but her and Noah. She grabbed Noah, still half asleep, and drove to a Holiday Inn on 28th Street, checking in at 3:20 a.m. She texted Jenna the audio clip, who called, voice trembling, "Liv, that's not human. Stay out." Olivia didn't return home that day. On March 6th, she took Noah to her mom's house in Holland, 30 miles away, and contacted a local priest, Father Michael Reed, from St. Mary's Church in Kentwood. Father Reed, a 60-year-old with a calm demeanor, met her at a Starbucks at 1:00 p.m. She showed him the photos, wise footage, and audio. He didn't dismiss her, saying, "Evil can linger in places. I'll check the house." That afternoon, Olivia and Father Reed entered the house, Noah staying with her mom. The smell was gone, but the basement felt colder, 10 degrees below the main floor, though the thermostat read 68. Father Reed sprinkled holy water, prayed, and placed a crucifix on the basement wall. At 2:15 p.m., the Wise Cam, still running, caught a shadow, tall and jagged, crossing the basement stairs, time-stamped. Father Reed's face tightened. "This is beyond me," he said. He referred her to a paranormal investigator, Karen Holt, based in Lansing, 70 miles away. On March 7, Olivia met Karen, a 45-year-old former journalist, at the house. Karen brought an EMF meter, a thermal camera, and a spirit box. She walked the basement, her meter spiking to 6.2 milligauss near the smear, now barely visible, far above the normal 0.1. At 3:00 p.m., the spirit box crackled, spitting out, "Mine, stay." Olivia's knees buckled. The thermal camera showed a cold spot, 15 degrees below the room, shaped like a figure near the furnace, time-stamped 3. 4 p.m., Karen asked, "Who are you? Why here?" The spirit box replied, "Bound. Anger." Karen's voice was steady but firm. "This isn't a ghost. It's darker, maybe demonic, tied to this house." She suggested a full cleansing but needed more data. That night, Olivia stayed at the Holiday Inn, setting up the Wisecam remotely to monitor the basement. At 2:53 a.m., the feed showed the crucifix falling from the wall, landing 6 feet away, time-stamped. The recorder, left running, caught a laugh, low and mocking, at 2:52 a.m. Olivia sent the footage to Karen, who called at 8:00 a.m. on March 8. "This is serious," Karen said. "We need a specialist." She contacted a demonologist, Brother Thomas Kane, a 55-year-old Benedictine monk from the monastery in Kalamazoo. On March 9, Brother Thomas arrived, carrying a leather case with relics, holy water, and a Latin prayer book. Olivia, Karen, and Father Reed joined him at the house at 6:00 p.m., Noah still at her mom's. Brother Thomas walked the basement, his face grim. Something was invited here, he said, noting the smear's location near the furnace, a possible focal point. He asked Olivia about the house's history. She'd never researched it, so Karen pulled records from the Kent County Clerk's office, finding the house was built in 1972 on land once owned by a man named Victor Klein, who died in 1968. A 1967 Grand Rapids Press article mentioned Klein as a recluse suspected of occult practices, though never proven. Neighbors reported strange lights in the field where Olivia's house now stood. Brother Thomas nodded. That's enough. Something was summoned, and it stayed. At 7:00 p.m., Brother Thomas began the cleansing, chanting in Latin, sprinkling holy water, and placing blessed salt around the basement. Karen's EMF meter dropped to 0.2 milligauss, the cold spot gone. At 7:32 p.m., the spirit box, still on, hissed, then went silent. Olivia felt the air lighten like a weight lifted. The Wise cam caught nothing unusual, time-stamped 7:35 p.m. Brother Thomas warned, "It's gone, but stay vigilant. Pray daily." Olivia nodded, exhausted but relieved. She and Noah returned home on March 10. The basement door locked, a new crucifix hung. Olivia posted her story to R Paranormal on March 11 under the username Mom25 with the Wise clips, audio, and smear photos hitting 0 upvotes in 24 hours. Karen and Brother Thomas confirmed the entity was likely banished, but Olivia sold the house in April 2025, moving to an apartment in Wyoming, Michigan, 10 miles away. She keeps the recorder off, the basement a memory she buries. Kentwood's back to normal, Dairy Queen buzzing, Mr. Larson tinkering. But Olivia checks her locks every night, and Noah sleeps with a nightlight just in case. Lost hiker found something evil. Lost hiker stumbled into pure evil. That's the chilling ordeal Mason Reed faced in the late fall of 2024. Deep in the wilderness of Montana's Bitterroot National Forest, a rugged expanse of 1.6 million acres near the Idaho border. The Bitterroot's a place of towering pines, jagged peaks, and trails that wind through valleys where cell service is a myth. Mason, a 30-year-old software developer from Missoula, 40 miles north, wasn't new to hiking. He'd tackled trails across the Rockies, logging 50 miles a month on his Garmin watch. But on November 9, 2024, a solo trek on the Blodgett Canyon Trail led him to something no map could have prepared him for, something that turned a day hike into a fight for survival. Missoula is a college town, home to 75 people with craft breweries like Bayern and a vibrant outdoor scene. Mason fit right in, spending weekends climbing, kayaking, or hiking with his border collie Riley, who stayed home that day. He lived in a rented bungalow on Higgins Avenue, bought his gear at REI, and followed local hiking forums on Reddit, like Montana Outdoors. The Blodgett Canyon Trail, a 12-mile out and back in the Bitterroot, was his pick for November 9, drawn by its granite cliffs and solitude. He told his roommate Nate, a 28-year-old barista, he'd be back by 6:00 p.m. Mason packed light, a Osprey backpack, a Nikon's 50 camera, a Garmin GPS, a headlamp, water, trail mix, and a first aid kit. He drove his 2020 Subaru Outback to the trailhead, 20 miles west of Hamilton, arriving at 8:00 a.m. The sky was clear, 38 degrees, frost on the ground. He snapped a selfie at the trail sign, time-stamped 8:03 a.m., and started hiking, the canyon quiet except for the crunch of his boots. The trail followed Blodgett Creek, a stream carving through pines and boulders. Mason planned to hike 6 miles to a viewpoint, eat lunch, and return. By 10:30 a.m., he was 3 miles in, the trail steepening, his Nikon capturing shots of cliffs glowing in the morning light. At 11:15 a.m., he noticed something odd, a faint hum like a distant generator coming from the trees. He paused, checking his Garmin, which showed 46.773 degrees down, 114.48 2-degree watts, still on the trail. The hum faded, and he shrugged it off, maybe a plane overhead. But at 11:37 a.m., his Garmin glitched, the screen flickering, then blank. He tapped it, annoyed, and pulled out his phone. An iPhone 14, but it had no signal, expected in the canyon. He kept going, unaware he'd missed a fork in the trail, veering onto an unmarked path, overgrown with ferns. By noon, Mason realized he was off course. The trail was gone, replaced by dense brush and rocks. He backtracked, but the hum returned, louder, vibrating in his chest. At 12:22 p.m., he found a clearing, maybe 30 feet wide, unnatural in the thick forest. In the center stood a stone structure, crude, like a cairn, 4 feet tall, surrounded by smaller rocks in a spiral pattern. His Nikon snapped a photo, timestamp 12:24 p.m., the hum now a low drone, coming from the cairn. Mason's gut screamed to leave, but curiosity pulled him closer. The rocks were etched with symbols, lines, circles, something like an eye. He touched the cairn, cold despite the sun, and the drone stopped. Silence, heavy, unnatural. Then, a snap, like a branch breaking from the trees behind him. He spun, Nikon raised, and saw it. A figure, tall, maybe 7 feet, cloaked in shadow, standing 50 yards away, motionless. The photo, later checked, showed only trees. Timestamped 12:27 p.m. Mason bolted, crashing through brush, his backpack snagging on thorns. The figure didn't follow, but the hum resumed, pulsing like it was inside his skull. He ran blindly, tripping over roots, his headlamp falling out, lost. At 1:05 p.m., he stopped, gasping, at a dry creek bed, his Garmin dead. Phone at 10%. The forest felt wrong. Too dark for midday, the air thick like before a storm. He heard whispers, not words, just murmurs from all directions. He recorded a video on his iPhone, voice shaky, "I'm lost, something's here," timestamped 8 p.m. The whispers grew, and his flashlight, clipped to his pack, flickered, though its batteries were new. He moved, following the creek bed, hoping it led to the main trail. At 1:32 p.m., he found a rusted trapper's cabin, half collapsed, its door hanging by one hinge. Inside, he saw scratches on the walls, deep like claws, in a journal, pages brittle, dated 1923. The last entry read, "It watches. Don't look." Mason shoved the journal in his pack, his Nikon capturing the cabin, timestamped 1:35 p.m. The whispers became a voice, low, growling, "See me." Mason's flashlight died. He stumbled out, the figure now closer, 20 yards away, its form shifting, like smoke, eyes glinting red in the Nikon's flash, caught faintly at 1:40 p.m. He ran again, the voice louder, "Stay. See." The forest seemed to twist, trees leaning inward, the path looping back to the cairn. Impossible. At 2:15 p.m., Mason, exhausted, hid behind a boulder, recording another iPhone video. "It's following me. I can't get out," timestamped. His phone died. The hum was deafening now, his head throbbing. He saw the figure again, closer, its shape clear gaunt, limbs too long, no face, just those eyes. He screamed, running, tripping, until he hit the main trail. Somehow, at 3:00 p.m., the hum fading, the figure gone. He staggered to the trailhead, collapsing in his Subaru. At 4:47 p.m., the Nikon's battery dead, but the journal still in his pack. Mason drove to a gas station in Hamilton, the Bitterroot Quick Stop, and called Nate at 5:03 p.m., voice hoarse, "I'm alive." Something was out there. Nate met him at the gas station, pale when he saw Mason's scratched face and torn jacket. They watched the Nikon photos and iPhone videos, the figure's eyes barely visible, the cairn symbol stark. Mason texted his sister Ellie, a teacher in Bozeman, 200 miles away, with a photo of the journal. "What is this?" She replied, "Get help." Mason posted the clearing's photo to R Paranormal under the username MT-Hiker24, hitting 6-0 upvotes in 12 hours. Users speculated about skinwalkers, wendigos, or something older tied to native Salish legends of shadow beings in the Bitterroot. On November 10, Mason visited the Missoula Public Library, a modern building with a Montana history section. He showed the journal to a librarian, Dr. Susan Klein, a 62-year-old historian. She recognized the symbols as similar to Salish warnings meant to mark forbidden places. The journal belonged to a trapper, Amos Reed, no relation to Mason, who vanished in 1923. A 1923 Missoulian article reported Amos's cabin found empty, walls scratched, his rifle unfired. Dr. Klein warned Mason, "Some places are left alone for a reason." He dug deeper, finding a 1978 Forest Service report of missing hikers near Blodgett Canyon with strange markings, noted but unexplained. Mason's stomach churned. Was the cairn a marker, a trap? That night, at his bungalow, Mason couldn't sleep. At 2:33 a.m., he heard the hum faint outside his window. He grabbed his Nikon, but the battery, charged that day, was dead. He set up his iPhone to record, catching a whisper, "See me," timestamped, 2:35 a.m. He called Nate, who crashed on his couch, both too scared to sleep. On November 11, Mason contacted Big Sky Paranormal, a Missoula-based group. Their leader, Travis Cole, a 39-year-old ex-Marine, met Mason at Bayern Brewery, reviewing the footage. "That's not a ghost," Travis said. "It's something else." He agreed to investigate the trail, bringing an EMF meter, a thermal camera, and a spirit box. On November 12, at 7:00 a.m., Travis, Mason, and two investigators, Rachel and Ben, hiked to the clearing. Riley left it home. The cairn was still there, the symbols sharper in daylight. Travis's EMF meter spiked to 5.7 milligauss, far above the normal 0.1, time-stamped 8:22 a.m. The thermal camera showed a cold spot, 10 degrees below the forest, hovering over the cairn, time-stamped 8:25 a.m. At 8:30 a.m., the spirit box crackled, spitting out, "Leave! Eyes!" Mason's throat tightened. Rachel's flashlight flickered, and Ben saw movement branches bending, no wind. The hum returned, low, and Travis's camera caught a shadow, fleeting, at 8:37 a.m. "We're done," Travis said, voice steady but urgent. They hiked out, the hum fading, reaching the trailhead at 10:15 a.m. At Travis's office, a rented space near the university, they analyzed the data. The EMF spikes, thermal anomaly, and spirit box suggested a non-human entity possibly tied to the land. Travis cited Salish oral histories, shared by a tribal elder in 2020, about watchers in the Bitterroot, guarding sacred sites. "You disturbed it," Travis told Mason. "It followed you." He arranged for a Salish elder, Joseph Black Elk, 70, to perform a ceremony. On November 13 at 6:00 p.m., Joseph met Mason at the trailhead, not the clearing, for safety. He burned cedar, sang a prayer, and scattered tobacco, asking the entity to return to the earth. The air felt lighter, the Nikon, now working, catching no anomalies, time-stamped 6:45 p.m. Mason posted a final Reddit update on November 14 with the iPhone audio, Nikon photos, and thermal data hitting 12-0 upvotes. He hasn't hiked since, sticking to Missoula's breweries and gym. He keeps the journal in a locked drawer, the cairn's photo deleted. Bitterroot's trails are busy again, hikers unaware of the clearing. Mason checks his windows at night, hearing the hum sometimes, faint, like a memory. He hopes Joseph's ceremony worked, but those red eyes still haunt him. Ouija board summoned pure terror. Ouija board unleashed a living nightmare. That's the horrifying reality Chloe Martinez faced in the winter of 2024 in a small college town called Bellingham, Washington, about 90 miles north of Seattle. Bellingham's a quirky place, home to Western Washington University with 16 zero-students, craft coffee shops like Makeworth, and a waterfront that smells of salt and pine. Chloe, a 21-year-old junior majoring in environmental science, lived in an off-campus rental on Indian Street, a creaky craftsman house shared with 3 roommates. She wasn't into the occult, more likely to be found at a climate rally than a seance. But on December 14, 2024, a seemingly harmless game with a Ouija board, bought on a whim, opened a door to something she can't explain, something that still haunts her. Bellingham's got a laid-back vibe, with farmers markets, microbreweries like Aslan, and trails in Whatcom Falls Park where students jog. Chloe's house, rented for $2,000 a month, was typical for the area built in 1925, with a sloped porch, stained glass windows, and a basement they used for storage. Her roommates were Mia, a 22-year-old art major, Liam, a 21-year-old computer science student, and Ava, a 20-year-old psychology major. They were tight, hosting game nights, splitting Costco runs, and joking about the house's quirks, like doors that wouldn't stay shut. Chloe, practical and skeptical, rolled her eyes at Mia's tarot cards and Liam's ghost hunting apps. But when Ava brought home a Ouija board from a thrift store, the Rusty Anchor, for $5, Chloe agreed to try it, mostly for laughs. It was a cold Saturday night, 34 degrees, rain drumming the roof, and they were bored, finals done, campus quiet. At 8:00 p.m., they gathered in the living room, the board on a coffee table, surrounded by empty pizza boxes and a flickering lavender candle. Chloe set up her iPhone 13 to record, propped on a bookshelf, time-stamped 8:02 p.m., thinking it'd be funny for TikTok. Mia lit incense, sandalwood, and dimmed the lights. The board was old, wood-worn, letters faded, the planchette a chipped triangle. They placed their fingers on it, giggling, and Ava asked, "Is anyone here?" The planchette twitched, sliding to yes. Chloe assumed Mia was pushing it, but Mia's eyes were wide. Liam asked, "What's your name?" The planchette spelled E-L-I-S-E. Chloe laughed. "Nice try, guys." But the air felt heavier, the candle flickering, though no windows were open. At 8:07 p.m., the iPhone video caught a shadow, brief, crossing the wall behind them, unnoticed at the time. Ava, spooked, asked, "Elise, are you friendly?" The planchette jerked to no. Chloe's stomach tightened, but she pressed on. "What do you want?" The board spelled stay, then you, fast, the planchette shaking. Liam pulled his hands back. "I'm out." Mia snapped, "Don't break the circle." The candle went out, smoke curling, at 8:11 p.m., the iPhone still recording. A knock came from the basement door, 3 slow thuds echoing in the quiet house. Chloe froze, her pulse racing. They hadn't touched the basement all night. Its lock rusted, key lost. She grabbed her phone, stopped the video, and flicked on the lights. The planchette was upside down, though no one had moved it. They shoved the board under the couch, agreeing to never touch it again. But that was just the start. That night, Chloe couldn't sleep. At 2:13 a.m., she woke to whispers, not words, just murmurs, from her closet. She checked, finding only clothes, but her iPhone, charging on her nightstand, had recorded audio, time-stamped 2:12 a.m., capturing a voice, faint, saying, "See you." She texted the group chat. "Anyone awake? This is creepy." Mia replied, "Heard something too." Footsteps. They met in the kitchen, bleary-eyed, and played the audio, their faces pale. Liam suggested burning the board, but Ava, who'd read horror forums, said that could make it worse. At 3:00 a.m., they heard another knock, louder from the basement. Chloe grabbed a flashlight and a kitchen knife, Liam behind her with a baseball bat. The basement door was ajar, the lock dangling, broken. They didn't go down, slamming it shut, piling chairs against it. On December 15, Chloe skipped her morning class, too shaken. She drove to the Rusty Anchor, a cluttered shop near the bay, and asked the clerk, a 60-year-old named Barb, about the board. Barb frowned. That came from an estate sale. Old lady on Maple Street died last month. She gave Chloe the address, 1427 Maple, and a name, Elise Thornton, 87, no family. Chloe visited the Bellingham Public Library, a brick building with free Wi-Fi, and searched obituaries. A November 2024 Bellingham Herald notice confirmed Elise's death. Passed peacefully at home, no cause listed. A 1985 article mentioned Elise as a recluse, rumored to dabble in spiritualism after her husband's death in a 1979 mill accident. Chloe's skin crawled. Was Elise tied to the board? That afternoon, Chloe bought a digital voice recorder, a Tascam DR5X for $89 at Guitar Center, and set it up in the living room. At 7:00 p.m., the roommates gathered, the board still under the couch, untouched. The recorder caught knocks, soft, at 7:14 p.m. from the basement, though no one was down there. Mia, trembling, suggested a medium, but Liam wanted to call campus security. Chloe, desperate, posted the iPhone video to R Paranormal under the username WA-Student21, hitting 50 upvotes in 10 hours. A user, PNW Ghost, suggested a local paranormal group, Cascadia Spirits. Chloe emailed them, attaching the audio, and got a reply from their leader, Ethan Wells, a 35-year-old former paramedic. On December 16, Ethan arrived at 6:00 p.m. with an EMF meter, a thermal camera, and a spirit box. The house felt colder, 60 degrees despite the heater. Ethan's meter spiked to 4.9 milligauss near the basement door, far above the normal 0.1, timestamped 7 p.m. He set up the spirit box, asking, "Elise, are you here?" It hissed, then said, "Not Elise, other." Chloe's heart sank. The thermal camera showed a cold spot 12 degrees below the room, near the couch, timestamped 6:12 p.m. At 6:15 p.m., the recorder caught a laugh, sharp, mocking, not human. Ethan's face tightened. "This isn't a ghost," he said. "It's something you invited through the board." He urged them to leave for the night and arranged for a spiritualist, Nora Black, to assist. The roommates crashed at Mia's boyfriend's apartment, a studio near campus. At 2:19 a.m., Chloe's recorder, left running, caught a voice, clear, saying, "Come back, timestamp." She sent it to Ethan, who called, "Stay away until we fix this." On December 17, Chloe researched the house, visiting the Whatcom County Assessor's Office. Records showed 1,427 Maple, Elise's old address, was their rental before redistricting changed street names in the 1990s. A 1,979 police report noted disturbances at the house, with Elise claiming voices after her husband's death. Chloe's blood ran cold. The board had been in the house all along. On December 18, Ethan and Nora, a 50-year-old with a calm presence, met the roommates at the house at 5:00 p.m. Nora sensed a malevolent presence. Not Elise, but something older, drawn by the board's use. She searched the basement, finding a hidden panel behind a shelf, revealing a box of paper letters from Elise dated 1980, describing a dark thing she'd contacted, begging it to leave. Nora's spirit box at 5:27 p.m. said, "Bound. Hate." The EMF meter spiked to 6.3 milligauss, the air heavy like smoke. Nora began a cleansing, burning sage, chanting and placing salt around the board, which she sealed in a steel box with a cross. At 5:45 p.m., the recorder caught a scream, fading, then silence. The thermal camera showed no cold spots. The house lighter time-stamped 5:47 p.m. Chloe and her roommates returned on December 19, the board gone, taken by Nora for safekeeping. They posted a final Reddit update with the iPhone video, recorder audio, and thermal data hitting 10-0 upvotes. Chloe moved out in January 2025 to a dorm, her roommates scattering to new leases. She avoids thrift stores now, sticks to coffee shops and classes. Bellingham's back to its rainy rhythm, students biking to Makeworth, unaware of the house on Indian Street. Chloe keeps her recorder off, but sometimes, at night, she hears a faint knock and wonders if it's really gone. Something watched me from the woods. That's the terrifying truth Nathan Brooks uncovered in the early fall of 2024. In a remote corner of Maine called Millinocket, a town of about 0 people nestled near Baxter State Park. Millinocket's a place of dense forests, logging roads, and lakes where moose outnumber tourists. Nathan, a 29-year-old park ranger at Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument, spent his days patrolling trails and checking campsites. He was no stranger to the wilderness, trained to handle bears, storms, or lost hikers. But on September 28, 2024, during a routine patrol, he encountered something in the woods that wasn't animal, wasn't human, and wasn't leaving him alone. Millinocket's a tight-knit town, with a diner called Ruthie's, a general store stocking ammo and bait, and a history tied to the Great Northern Paper Company, now gone. Nathan lived in a cabin on Golden Road, a dirt track off Route 11, rented for $600 a month. His life was simple: coffee from a percolator, shifts in his Ranger truck, and evenings with his girlfriend Lily, a 27-year-old nurse at Millinocket Regional Hospital. He wasn't superstitious, dismissing local tales of forest spirits or Bigfoot sightings as campfire stories. His job gave him a front row seat to the Katahdin Wilderness, 0 acres of pine, birch, and granite ridges. On September 28, he set out at 6:00 a.m., driving his Ford F-150 to a trailhead near Sandbank Stream, tasked with checking fire pits after a dry spell. He packed a radio, a Nikon D3000 500 camera for documenting violations, a Garmin GPS, a water bottle, and a Glock 19, standard for rangers. The air was crisp, 42 degrees, the sky pink with dawn. He snapped a photo of the trailhead sign, time-stamped 6:07 a.m., and started his patrol, unaware he'd soon wish he'd stayed home. The Sandbank Trail was a 5-mile loop, popular with day hikers, but quiet that morning. Nathan hiked a mile in, his boots crunching on pine needles, the forest alive with birdsong. At 7:15 a.m., he reached a campsite, its fire pit cold, no issues. His Nikon captured the site, time-stamped. But as he turned to leave, he felt it a prickling on his neck, like eyes on him. He scanned the trees, seeing nothing but shadows, his radio silent. He chalked it up to fatigue, having pulled a double shift the day before. At 7:40 a.m., a mile deeper, he found something odd. A pile of stones, stacked like a pyramid, maybe 2 feet high, in the middle of the trail. It wasn't natural, too precise, with smaller rocks forming a circle around it. He took a photo, time-stamped 7:42 a.m., his Garmin noting the coordinates: 45.9, 17 degrees, 68.8, 53 degree watts. Then he heard a sound, low like a growl, not bear or moose, coming from the woods to his left. He unholstered his Glock, heart thudding, but saw nothing. The growl faded, and he moved on, unsettled. By 8:30 a.m., Nathan was 3 miles in, the trail narrowing, the forest thicker. The feeling of being watched grew heavy, like a weight on his chest. At a clearing near a stream, he found another stone pile, larger, 3 feet tall, with scratches on the rock's lines, curves, almost like letters. He snapped a photo, time-stamped 8:35 a.m., and noticed his Garmin glitching, the screen frozen. His radio crackled, spitting static, though he hadn't touched it. He called base. "This is Ranger Brooks, Sandbank Trail, anything on the wire?" No response, just static, time-stamped 8:37 a.m. on his log. Then, a branch snapped, loud, 30 yards away. He swung his Nikon, catching a Chapital, maybe 6 feet humanoid, blending with the trees, its edges blurry. The photo, later checked, showed only pines, time-stamped 8:39 a.m. Nathan's training kicked in. Don't panic, assess, retreat. He backed away, Glock raised, the growl returning, closer from multiple directions. Nathan hiked fast, aiming for the trailhead, the forest darker despite the morning sun. At 9:05 a.m., his flashlight, clipped to his pack, flickered, though its batteries were fresh. He heard whispers, not words, just hisses, weaving through the trees. He recorded a voice memo on his phone, an iPhone 11. "Something's out here, not animal," time-stamped 9:07 a.m. The stone piles appeared again, 3 more, smaller, along the trail as if guiding him deeper. At 9:20 a.m., he reached a fork he didn't recognize. The trail marker's gone. His Garmin was dead, phone at 15%, no signal. The whispers grew, forming a voice, raspy. "Look back." He didn't, running now, his Nikon bouncing, catching blurry shots of trees, time-stamped 9:22 a.m. The shape appeared again, closer, 20 yards behind, its eyes reflective, like coins in the gloom. He fired his Glock, 2 shots into the ground, hoping to scare it. The growl stopped, but the eyes stayed unmoving. At 10:00 a.m., Nathan stumbled into a clearing, not on his map, with a rotting lean-to, its wood blackened as if burned. Inside, he found a rusted knife, its handle carved with symbols matching the stone piles. He took a photo, time-stamped 10:03 a.m., and grabbed the knife, his hands shaking. The voice returned louder. "See me now." He bolted, the forest closing in, branches scraping his face. His phone recorded another memo. "It's following, I'm lost," time-stamped 10:07 a.m. At 10:30 a.m., he saw the shape again, clearer, its body gaunt, limbs too long, moving jerkily like a puppet. He fired 3 more shots, straight at it, but it vanished, the Nikon catching nothing, time-stamped 10:32 a.m. Exhausted, he kept moving, the trail reappearing, impossibly at 11:15 a.m. He reached his truck at 11:45 a.m., locking the doors, his Nikon out of battery, the knife still in his pack. Nathan drove to Ruthie's diner, hands trembling, and called Lily at 12:05 p.m. "I saw something. Meet me." She arrived, seeing his scratched face and torn uniform. They reviewed the Nikon photos, the stone piles stark, the lean-to eerie, but no shape. The iPhone memos were clear, his voice panicked, the whispers faint but audible. Nathan texted his supervisor, Ranger Ellen Cole, with a photo of the knife, time-stamped 12:15 p.m. "Check Sandbank. Something's wrong," he wrote. Ellen replied, "Stay put. We'll patrol." Nathan posted the stone pile photo to R Cryptids under the username ME Ranger29, hitting 7-0 upvotes in 14 hours. Users mentioned Penobscot legends of forest watchers, entities tied to sacred lands, angered by intruders. On September 29, Nathan visited the Millinocket Historical Society, a small museum on Central Street. The curator, Mr. Harold Pike, 72, examined the knife, recognizing the symbols as Penobscot used to mark boundaries. He pulled a 1,931 journal from a logger, Samuel Frost, describing a thing in the woods near Sandbank Stream with eyes like fire. A 1975 Bangor Daily News article reported missing hikers in the area with odd rock formations noted by rangers. Nathan's gut twisted. Was this thing ancient, guarding the forest? He gave the knife to Harold, wanting it gone. That night, at his cabin, he heard scratches outside, slow, deliberate at 2:27 a.m. He set up his iPhone to record, catching a growl, low, time-stamped 2:29 a.m. He called Lily, who stayed over, both sleepless. On September 30, Nathan contacted Maine Paranormal Society, based in Bangor, 60 miles away. Their leader, Diane Morse, a 44-year-old biologist, met him at Ruthie's, reviewing the photos and audio. "This isn't a bear or a hoax," she said. She agreed to investigate, bringing an EMF meter, a thermal camera, and a spirit box. On October 1 at 6:00 a.m., Diane, Nathan, and two investigators, Paul and Tara, hiked to the clearing, the stone piles still there, untouched. Diane's EMF meter spiked to 5.2 milligauss, time-stamped 7:03 a.m., far above the normal 0.1. The thermal camera showed a heat signature, faint, moving between trees, time-stamped 7:06 a.m. The spirit box hissed, saying, "Go, mine, at 7:09 a.m." Nathan's throat tightened. Tara's flashlight died, and Paul saw the shape fleeting 40 yards away. Diane's camera caught it, blurry, time-stamped 7:12 a.m. "We're leaving," Diane said, voice firm. They reached the trailhead at 8:30 a.m., the forest silent. At Diane's office, a rented space in Bangor, they analyzed the data. The EMF spikes, thermal anomaly, and spirit box suggested a territorial entity, possibly tied to Penobscot lore. Diane cited a 1990s study by a tribal elder, Mary Sakabason, on land spirits in the Katahdin region, angered by disrespect. "You crossed a boundary," Diane told Nathan. She arranged for a Penobscot elder, Thomas Paul, 68, to perform a ceremony. On October 2, at 5:00 p.m., Thomas met Nathan at the trailhead, burning sweetgrass, offering tobacco, and praying in Penobscot, asking the entity to rest. The air warmed. Nathan's iPhone, catching no sounds, time-stamped 5:45 p.m. Nathan posted a final Reddit update on October 3 with the iPhone audio, Nikon photos, and thermal data hitting 11,000 upvotes. He took a desk job at the ranger station, avoiding Sandbank. He keeps the photos on a hard drive. The scratch is quieter now. Millinocket's gearing up for winter. Ruthie's serving chili. But Nathan hikes with a group now, his Glock always loaded, those eyes still in his nightmares. My reflection wasn't me. That's the bone-chilling reality Hannah Sullivan faced in the spring of 2025 in a small city called Concord, New Hampshire, home to about 44,000 people, just 70 miles north of Boston. Concord's a quaint place with a historic downtown, a state house with a golden dome, and cafes like the Works Bakery, where locals grab bagels. Hannah, a 26-year-old graphic designer working remotely for a Manchester ad agency, lived in a one-bedroom apartment on North Main Street, rented for $1,400 a month. She was practical, not prone to flights of fancy, her life filled with deadlines, yoga classes, and Netflix binges. But on March 10, 2025, something in her bathroom mirror turned her world upside down, showing her a reflection that wasn't her sin, it didn't want to leave. Concord's the kind of town where you can still find farmers markets on Capitol Street, a craft brewery called Litherman's, and trails along the Merrimack River. Hannah's apartment, in a renovated 1900s building, had charm-high ceilings, hardwood floors, and a clawfoot tubbet. It also had quirks, like a bathroom mirror that always fogged up, no matter how hot the shower. She lived alone, no pets, her social life revolving around her friend group, Emma, a 25-year-old barista, Tyler, a 27-year-old high school teacher, and Rachel, a 26-year-old nurse. They'd meet at True Brew Barista for trivia nights or hike in White Mountain National Forest. Hannah wasn't into ghost stories, rolling her eyes at Tyler's tales of haunted New England inns. But that Monday night, March 10, everything changed. Hannah got home at 7:00 p.m. after a yoga class at a studio on Warren Street. She was tired, her muscles sore, and headed for a shower. The bathroom was small, with white tiles, a pedestal sink, and the mirror, an oval antique framed in tarnished silver, bolted to the wall. She turned on the hot water, steam rising, and undressed. Her iPhone 13 on the sink, playing a podcast about design trends. At 7:15 p.m., she stepped out, wrapped in a towel, and wiped the mirror clear. Her reflection looked normal at first brown hair, hazel eyes, a freckle on her cheek. But as she reached for her phone, the reflection didn't move. It stood still, staring, its eyes darker, almost black, its mouth twitching into a smirk. Hannah froze, her hand midair, the podcast still playing, timestamp 7:17 p.m. She blinked, and the reflection blinked, but late, like it was mimicking her. She backed away, heart racing, and the reflection stayed, smirking until she flicked off the light and ran out. Hannah didn't sleep well that night. She locked her bathroom door, a flimsy latch, and texted Emma at 7:25 p.m. Weird mirror thing, freaked out. Emma replied, "Too many horror movies, lol. Call me tomorrow." Hannah tried to laugh it off, blaming exhaustion or the steam playing tricks. But at 2:41 a.m., she woke to a sound scratching like nails on glass from the bathroom. She grabbed her phone, recorded a voice memo, "Something's in there," timestamp 2:42 a.m., and stayed in bed, the scratching stopping after 5 minutes. The memo, later checked, caught a faint whisper, "Look," not her voice. She didn't check the bathroom, keeping the door locked, and worked from her couch the next day, March 11, avoiding the mirror entirely. That afternoon, Hannah called Tyler, who came over at 4:00 p.m. She showed him the memo, his face paling. "That's not normal," he said, but suggested a logical fix. Cover the mirror. They hung a towel over it, securing it with duct tape, and tested the bathroom. No sounds, no fog. Tyler stayed for dinner, takeout from Chen's Garden, and left at 8:00 p.m. Hannah felt better, but at 11:15 p.m., the towel was on the floor, the mirror clear, though she hadn't touched it. She snapped a photo with her iPhone, timestamped 11:17 p.m., and saw it. Her reflection, but with those black eyes, head tilted, smiling wider than her face could. She screamed, slammed the door, and called Rachel, who arrived at 11:30 p.m., calming her down. Rachel, practical, said, "Maybe it's the lighting. Let's check tomorrow." On March 12, Hannah bought a digital voice recorder, a Sony ICD UX570 for $79 at Best Buy in Manchester, and a Wisecam V3 for $39, setting it up to face the bathroom door. She hit record at 9:00 p.m., the apartment quiet, the mirror still uncovered, her nerves frayed. At 2:46 a.m., she woke to the scratching again, louder, like claws on metal. The Wise app showed the bathroom door rattling, timestamped 2:45 a.m., though it was locked. The recorder caught a voice, clear, saying, "See me now," at 2:44 a.m. Deep, not human. Hannah grabbed her keys and drove to a Motel 6 on South River Road, checking in at 3:10 a.m. She texted Emma, Rachel, and Tyler the Wise clip in audio, group chat exploding with, "Get out, stay out!" Emma called, "That's not a prank, come to my place." Hannah stayed at Emma's apartment, a loft near downtown, on March 13. She researched her building, visiting the Concord Historical Society, a museum on North State Street. The curator, Mrs. Evelyn Gray, 65, found records. The apartment was part of a 1,902 tenement, site of a 1,947 suicide. A woman, Clara Vance, 32, hanged herself in the bathroom, leaving a note about seeing someone else in the mirror. A 1,947 Concord Monitor article called it a tragedy, mentioning Clara's obsession with an antique mirror bought at an estate sale. Hannah's blood ran cold. Was Clara's mirror hers? She posted the wise clip to Our Paranormal under the username NH Designer26, hitting 6 upvotes in 12 hours. Users speculated about mirror entities, citing New England folklore of spirits trapped in glass. On March 14, Hannah contacted Granite State Paranormal, a Concord-based group. Their leader, Mark Dillon, a 40-year-old electrician, met her at the Works Bakery, reviewing the footage and audio. "This is a strong presence," he said, "likely tied to the mirror." He agreed to investigate, bringing an EMF meter, a thermal camera, and a spirit box. That evening, at 7:00 p.m., Mark, Hannah, and 2 investigators, Lisa and Greg, entered the apartment, Emma and Rachel waiting outside. The bathroom felt colder, 55 degrees, despite the heater at 70. Mark's EMF meter spiked to 5.4 milligauss near the mirror, time-stamped 7:05 p.m., far above the normal 0.1. The thermal camera showed a cold spot, 10 degrees below the room, in front of the mirror, time-stamped 7:08 p.m. Mark used the spirit box, asking, "Clara, are you here?" It hissed, then said, "Not Clara, mine, at 7:10 p.m. Hannah's knees buckled. The recorder caught a laugh, sharp at 7:12 p.m., the mirror fogging, though no one breathed on it. Mark's face grew serious. "This isn't a ghost. It's something darker, using the mirror as a door." He advised removing it, but warned it might provoke the entity. At 7:30 p.m., Greg unscrewed the mirror, carefully wrapping it in a blanket, the EMF meter dropping to 0.2 milligauss. But as they carried it out, the wise cam caught a shadow, human-shaped, darting across the bathroom, time-stamped 7:34 p.m. Lisa's flashlight flickered, and the air turned heavy, like syrup. They stored the mirror in Mark's van, locked, and he called a colleague, Sister Margaret Cole, a 58-year-old Catholic spiritualist from Manchester. Hannah crashed at Emma's again, the recorder catching nothing that night. On March 15, Sister Margaret arrived at 6:00 p.m., meeting Hannah and Mark at the apartment. She inspected the bathroom, now mirrorless, and sensed a lingering malice. She found a 1,947 photo of Clara in the Historical Society's archive, her eyes eerily like the reflections. Margaret believed the entity wasn't Clara, but something Clara had summoned, perhaps through occult dabbling. At 6:30 p.m., Margaret performed a cleansing, sprinkling holy water, burning frankincense, and reciting prayers, placing a blessed medallion where the mirror hung. The thermal camera showed no cold spots. Time-stamped 6:45 p.m., the spirit box, used one last time, was silent. Mark took the mirror to a church in Manchester, where it was destroyed in a blessed fire, per Margaret's advice, on March 16. Hannah returned to her apartment on March 17, the bathroom normal, the air light. She posted a final Reddit update with the wise clip, recorder audio, and Clara's photo, hitting 9 upvotes. She moved to a new apartment in Manchester in April 2025, closer to work, avoiding mirrors at night. Concord's bustling again, the works packed with students, the Merrimack flowing calmly. Hannah keeps her wise cam off, but sometimes in a store window, she catches a glimpse of something dark and looks away fast. Ancient relic woke, something dark. That's the harrowing truth Abigail Foster uncovered in the early winter of 2025 in a sleepy town called Taos, New Mexico, home to about 60 people nestled in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. Taos is known for its adobe architecture, art galleries, and a mystical vibe tied to its Native American and Spanish roots. Abigail, a 33-year-old antiques dealer who ran a shop called Desert Finds on Paseo del Pueblo Sur, had a knack for spotting treasures at estate sales. But on January 15, 2025, a strange artifact she brought home from a local auction unleashed something dark, something that turned her quiet life into a waking nightmare. Taos is a blend of old and new, with tourists flocking to the Taos Pueblo, a UNESCO site, and locals grabbing coffee at places like World Cup Cafe. Abigail's shop, a cozy space filled with vintage lamps, Navajo rugs, and dusty books, was her pride, built after years of hustling at flea markets. She lived above the shop in a loft apartment with creaky floors and windows overlooking the snow-dusted plaza. Her routine was simple: open the shop at 10:00 a.m., chat with customers, and scour auctions for unique pieces. She wasn't superstitious, brushing off tales of cursed objects as marketing ploys. On January 14, she attended an auction at the Taos County Fairgrounds where a rancher's estate was being liquidated. Among the items was a small carved stone idol, about 6 inches tall, listed as pre-Columbian, origin unknown. Its surface was worn, etched with angular symbols, its face featureless except for deep, hollow eyes. Abigail won it for $120, drawn to its eerie beauty, planning to display it in her shop. She had no idea what she'd invited in. On January 15, Abigail brought the idol to her loft, setting it on a bookshelf next to a cactus and some paperbacks. That night at 8:0 p.m, she was sketching the idol for her shop's Instagram, her iPhone 14 propped up, recording a time-lapse for a reel, timestamped 8:02 p.m. The loft was warm, 68 degrees, a space heater humming, snow falling outside. As she sketched, the air grew heavy, like a storm was brewing indoors. Her phone's video later showed a flicker, brief, like a shadow, crossing the idol at 8:07 p.m., unnoticed at the time. At 8:15 p.m., she heard a hum, low, like a tuning fork, coming from the bookshelf. She checked, finding the idol warm to the touch, though it had been cold minutes before. She snapped a photo, time-stamped 8:17 p.m., the idol's eyes seeming deeper, almost glowing. Uneasy, she moved it to a drawer, locking it, and went to bed, blaming her imagination. At 2:23 a.m., Abigail woke to a sound scratching.